Go for it. You're the best.
So this is the Monday, October 21st, 2024 meeting of the Advisory Commission on Coastal Waters. In attendance is myself, Julie Jones, Bill Wright, Sam Bridges, Flip Hufford, Bill Cavers, and Rob Roberto on the phone, as well as John Keena, our harbor master, which gives us a quorum for tonight's meeting. Those who are missing are David Kahn, though he did give us a proxy earlier, Dave Deaver, Kevin Marks, Marty Masterson, and Grant Tancuz, as well as, Susan, are you in place of Lori?
No.
Okay, Lori Bora. So we're going to switch up the agenda. We'll call the meeting in order, switch up the agenda, and start with
Hey, Grant. Sorry about that.
Grant?
sorry, Grant Tancuz now also here in attendance. We're going to approve the minutes of the September 16, 2004 regular meeting. Can I have a motion?
Can I make the motion if I drafted them?
Can I have a motion?
Motion that we
you
accept the
can.
meeting minutes.
Second.
Second.
Okay. You approve the minutes? Raise your hands. Yeah. Here. That's Rob also said, yes, he approved it. And we have David Kahn's proxy to approve the minutes as well. John, if you want to start off with your report?
Sure. So just a couple of events in the harbor. We lost one of the no-wake buoys. It broke loose. It was recovered. It's been, I brought it over to the Norotan Yacht Club to repair. I guess one of the things I want to talk about with Norotan Yacht Club is maybe actually putting together a formal contract to maintain all of the harbor buoys. I know we had some problems with the mid-channel buoys. I had some discussion with the Darien police about this, and apparently years ago they maintained them. But for whatever reason, their budget was cut, or for whatever reason, they stopped doing it. So, you know, we've had, past couple of years, we've had the buoy at the end of the harbor that marks a rock. We've had a couple of mid-channel. We've had the no-wake buoy now. What I'd like to do is put together maybe a contract so those can be serviced on a regular basis instead of waiting till they fail and then going and finding them. So that's the thing. I don't know if I'll talk to you, Flip, or I'd just talk to Scott.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Another buoy issue is not related to Darien. I'm sure many of you are aware of the mooring field that was created by the Department of Transportation and the Coast Guard off of the southwest end of Greens Ledge Light. Those have been problematic all summer long. They've been breaking loose. The most recent one that broke loose is now situated, it's actually drifted about a nautical mile northwest of that mooring field and is now sitting off of Hay Island. They break loose, and once they break loose off the ledge, they encounter deeper water, and there's not enough chain, so they float gracefully over to, they find shallower water. So this one, now, others have wound up off of Fish Island. I think one of them was destroyed over there. A couple times they've drifted off, and the police have retrieved them. The police are, they're not out on a regular basis anymore. It's after Labor Day. So there's one sitting out there off of Hay Island. I called the Coast Guard about it. I've been having trouble getting a hold of the person who would be able to obtain the name of the permittee. So I took another route. I found out who the contractor was that actually put the moorings out there. That person turns out is only a subcontractor that was brought on just to put them in place, but not necessarily maintain them. So now he's going to get me in connection with the person that he knows that is in charge of this at the main contractor, which is the same contractor that is doing the train bridge project. So it's a very, very large contractor. So hopefully I'll get that name in the next day or two, and I'll deal with that.
You know what's funny about where it drifted to is, you know, off of Hay Island, as you're like between Hay and Fish, there's that 5-foot shallow spot that we've talked about.
This is more west of
It's
that.
it has moved around to several different locations there. I've watched it drift.
We were out on Sunday in our rib, and it was pretty close to that marker at that time, and I was like,
Yeah.
wow. There's a marker there. That's great. And it never occurred to me that it was from.
By
That I was
mistake.
like, well, how convenient.
Yeah.
We can
I-
just
I-
get one of our old
Leave it there.
moorings, attach it to it, put it in a place we'd like it, and just don't report it, and it would functionally stay there, marking a rock for a long time.
It's funny because I saw it yesterday, and I was like, I wonder what that's doing
A
there.
salvage law here that would work in our
Leave
favor.
it, just paint on it, rock.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, so I actually tried to move it just to see how it was. I was actually able to pull it hard enough that it actually, 3/4 of it submerged and it wasn't moving. So I assumed it's fast there now. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. But hopefully the contractor will do something and get it to move to the proper place and get the proper tackle that's necessary to keep them there. Because my feeling is by spring, there'll probably only be about 3 of those buoys left, and who knows where they'll be. We had 2 boats in the harbor that had an issue for who knows what reason. One boat sank and turtled, and we've had beautiful weather. It was a beautiful day. Got a call from a person who lives on Long Neck, and he was sitting at his desk and was looking out at the water and just watched it roll. So he called me, and then I got 2 calls right after that, one from the Darien Boat Club, one from the Norotan Yacht Club. I was able to figure out who the owner was. I wasn't able to contact him, but Darien Boat Club was actually able to get a hold of him. He was a Darien Boat Club member. And then there was a cat boat that they saved from sinking. It was very close, but Norotan Yacht Club was able to pump it out.
I think any of it had to do with that 9'4" tide, and they just had short chain on it? Because it happened at that time. It was bizarre.
But, I mean, what are you talking about?
I know, it doesn't make any sense.
An extra 2 feet
Yeah,
at the most?
pulled it under. I don't know. It doesn't
I
make sense.
just, I don't know.
It's weird.
It
They
is
would-
strange,
Yeah,
yeah.
that would seem strange.
And then the other odd occurrence we had, I know some of the people here were involved in it, was that mass fish death that happened in the harbor. I had spoken to a number of people about it. Then I know there was some correspondence amongst all of us. It was brought to my attention, there were numerous dead fish within the docks at the Darien Boat Club, many up by the Gorham's Pond Bridge. I had some correspondence with Chief of Police, the Health Department, the First Selectman. It was kind of determined that it was nothing unusual, but talking to other people in the harbor, it just didn't seem like other fish kills I've seen in the past.
We had the Coastal Commission had a cleanup day this past Saturday, where, among other things, we walked from the boat launch ramp up the east coast, east shoreline of the Goodwives River. And in the salt grass were numerous dead striped bass of like this sort of length. There were also skeletons of those same kind of bass in the boat launch ramp area where the crabs had eaten them. That is not typical.
No.
And to my recollection, historical fish kills are the bunker,
Right.
crowding themselves into that area, taking the oxygen out and dying. I've never seen dead striped bass like that.
Either have I. And I took pictures of a few dead striped bass out in the harbor. We had two incidents at the boat club. In addition to the striped bass and the bunker, we also had a sand shark swim up to the beach and just die. And then we had a crow, which I came upon, was sitting on a rock, only in probably about 8 inches of water, but the crow was on the rock and there was clearly something wrong with it. A gentleman who has some experience raising birds, I think he raises chickens or something, came over and looked at it and said, it's not injured, it's just deathly ill. And he brought it up, put it in a shaded area just outside the boat club. And I checked on it about a half an hour later and it was dead. It was very strange. I've just never seen a crow do that before, but it is the first for everything.
Wasn't that right in line with the time that Gorham's Pond was being drained?
Yes.
Like for their
The initial drainings, yeah. I mean, it
Biannual.
still is.
Friday the 14th.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Save the Sound, who we involved in the discussion, thought that there was a very high tide that allowed the fish to come in, the gate was open, and it became hypoxic with just the amount of fresh water coming down, and that was probably what caused the
But there's
large
almost
kill.
no, it's hard to kind of figure out because when they open those tidal gates to let, the first time, the first outgoing tide, it drains the whole place. So the next incoming tide is largely saltwater. But which is not going to be hypoxic. It's not going to become hypoxic in 5 hours before it flushes back out.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the striped bass dead all the way, like up halfway up Gorham's Pond.
Yeah.
So, maybe they had worked their way so far up and just ran out of.
Gotten trapped.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. So what the head of the Save the Sound water quality testing programs said was if there had been some sort of toxicity event, some sort of spill, there would be evidence because of just the span of the deaths that you would have seen something or smelled something on the water. And I don't know if anybody saw any evidence of that, but
That's what the biologist from the state, who's the same Molnar referred to in this article on sharks, et cetera, he said the same thing, that he
Yeah.
didn't think there was any macro smoking gun.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't like an oil spill or something that would have but it is quite pungent at low tide and even during the outward flushing of the water, because I drive by there 100 times a day. It's quite pungent this year.
the sulfur smell.
Yeah.
It was when we did the debris cleanup. I noticed that driving down the river, I was like, this really stinks. More so than normal, I think. I agree with that.
Maybe because of the drought? I don't know.
I don't know. It did raise to me the question of what is the policy for opening or closing those tidal gates?
Is there a policy?
To the best I can tell, there isn't really a policy other than whatever the neighbors kind of want in terms of just their view. I don't think there's a sophisticated ecological analysis. It's just, and so one of the things that I think might make sense if others agree is that we ask the Friends of Gorham Pond, who I think are the thought leaders, even though the town executes the raising and lowering of the tidal gates, the Friends of Gorham Pond to come in and just talk to us about what their thoughts are on that policy, because I don't know that it's done with any kind of specific environmental analysis in mind.
I think it's a great idea. What if we ask them to also talk with DPW and for them both to come here and present what they've been doing, what
Well,
they're going to do? Isn't DPW the one who determines the timing and
Yeah.
does the physical opening? So we could ask them to coordinate and come here and explain to us what they jointly do and why.
I believe, just based on a conversation in the hallway, that DPW basically is just executing what they're kind of
they say.
told to do. So they're not setting the policy in any way, I don't believe.
That's a great idea to have them in.
Yeah, I support it. For sure.
And the only other thing, as far as the ordinances, We we got a response from one of the town attorneys. We met, Julie, and Bill met with, briefly with her today, had a couple of questions which she could not answer. So now she's going to go back to the Board of Selectmen. Nothing else really to report on it at this time. There's just been a long period of silence, and now the town attorney has come back to us, and not sure still exactly where this is going to reside with town attorneys or outside attorneys, but hopefully we'll hear something soon, because it's the first we've heard in anything in a while today. All right.
Bill, do you want to do a dredging
Yeah.
update?
You probably all saw the results that came in, and they're looking favorable according to our contractor as far as the possibility of them being accepted by it'll now be the Corps of Engineers look at it. It takes 6 to 8 months for them to review it. EPA may look at it as well, with their knowledge, they believe it's got a good possibility of being able to drop it into the Sound, which would save us a lot of money. It should save us a lot of money. So we have to wait again, but each step looks better.
Can we, I'm trying to think about how we could potentially short-circuit the process, because I think what we don't want to do is spend a lot of time and money ultimately then to decide we don't want to do the project. And
Right.
could we approach a dredging company and say, just assume that we have clean spoils and that it's, that we've given you the green light? How much would it cost? Because I think there's like a watershed question out there.
Sure. So the company we've hired, part of their fee is to actually go out and do that for us, but usually they wait. I could gladly ask them and say, can you do some ballpark figures for us now? Or, we take a number now, put an inflation rate on it, whatever. We could, but I hate to see those numbers start jumping around, right? And people start seeing.
But
we don't
just
have any
as an
supply.
example, if they were to say, this is a $50,000 project, I think we would all have confidence that we could figure out where to get $50,000 and we should do it.
Yeah.
If they were to say it's a $4 million project,
Right.
I think equally we would have confidence that that's a tough putt, or at least
Maybe not.
it would engender a fair amount of conversation about whether it was worth it for the town to spend that money.
Yeah.
And then as you,
Or grant money, seek grant money to pay for a portion of it.
or if you can get, or if there's grant money.
If it's approved, isn't the window of doing it like
5.
5 years, right?
Yeah.
So
Start,
it could-
at least
it could-
start it.
If you knew it was going to be a $4 million project, right? I guess there's benefits in knowing both, right? If it's a little bit of money, you're like, okay, well, it's good. If it's a lot of money, you have 5 years to potentially plan or allocate for that, correct?
Right, but it's, at least to me, there's ultimately sort of a policy decision that the town needs to ultimately make, which is how much money is it going to cost and what benefit are we getting out of it? Because
I think that's our question to answer, right?
what, sorry?
That's not our question, this commission's question to answer that.
Well, that's, totally agree, but it is our commission's position to give a recommendation on that.
Yeah.
And I just, when you think about it, there's probably 2 boats at the boat club that need the enhanced depth. There's a handful of sailboats at the yacht club that need the enhanced depth. And it may be that collectively people decide that it's worth spending a lot of time and effort and money to do that. But why not have that discussion sort of at the front end rather than having you spend years of your life going through a permitting process?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel it's premature to try to come up with a number that may not be anything accurate at all. And And I'm concerned that if this keeps on some rate of
Filling.
increasing sediment, you know, it may be 5 feet now, but in 4 years from now, you know, it might be a whole lot less. It's hard to say, so.
Well, but there's certainly the historical rate of sedimentation has not been like that.
Right, it jumped quickly for this one site. I don't know, that's my personal opinion, that we just wait to have them come out with it and see. I hate to throw any kind of number out there, even if they guessed at it, because it may be far off.
But it's basically, as I understand dredging projects, you estimate the number of cubic yards of
Yep.
spoils you're gonna take, and it's
Yep.
pretty much like a cost per
It's a
yard.
setup cost, it's a takedown cost, it's per cubic yard, and how far do we have to take it?
Right.
It's pretty simple, and we could probably get a number like today's cost, if you think that we really want to throw that around. I don't know, that's up to you
There's
all.
also the pear tree, the other dredging project that we'd hoped to connect with. I'm not sure where that's going these days, but
Right.
that's another factor to consider.
Well,
It's a-
it would just, to me, it would be interesting to know order of magnitude, because I don't really have an appreciation of, is this a $100,000, I don't think it's a $50,000 project, but is it a $100,000 project? Is it a $1 million project, or is it a $5 million project? I don't know.
How much was does anyone know how much the boat club dredging was
Well,
pegged at?
you're going back 20 years.
Oh, no, I mean the
Yeah.
one that was priced out recently, that kind of
Oh.
got put on hold.
Yeah, well, that's a town project, but that's around the perimeter. I think the numbers were anywhere from $400,000 to $700,000 because there's heavy,
dirty, right?
heavy contamination.
Do we know how much, Eddie had indication for the part that wasn't contaminated? Because I know there was
Well,
part that was and part
there's-
that wasn't.
My thought was, if you were to coordinate, if you're going to go ahead with the two dredge projects, you've got one section that no how can you dump it in the sound. That has to go somewhere else. But as you round the bend, that sampling seemed to be much better. And my thought was, is if the outer harbor turned out well, which it sounds like it did.
There's a good chance.
There's a good chance that some of that excessive cost could be saved for this acceptable section.
If you group
Could
it
go
together.
out with the main harbor, and then that would reduce the expense that has to be dried and sent.
Right.
But yeah, $400,000 to $700,000 is what, but I mean, you know, that number,
I
Who
think a
knows?
large portion of that was the transport off-site, not into the.
oh,
site.
it is, it is. It's the dry, it has to be
But-
dried and then trucked away, as opposed to just put in a large barge and then taken out, and the barge just opens the bottom and sends it to the end of the bottom of the sound. That's much, much more reasonable in cost. I don't even know what numbers would be for good sediment out in the sound. The last time the boat club did a project like that, it was only like $115,000, $120,000. But it was for far more area than what the town is doing for $400,000 to $700,000. Probably only about 10% of what the club did is what the town is wants to dredge.
The only good news is it's actually a free drop. When you get out there and you drop it, there's no charge, so you just got to pay to get it out there.
Yeah.
Put it in, but it's free to get out.
Free to drop it out.
I think it's worth saying too, I think it's like painting your house, right? You can put it off, but if you put it off for long enough, your house is gonna fall apart and it's not gonna be worth anything. If you don't maintain that channel and keep it to something that's relatively navigable most of the time, and it sounds like we've deemed that to be 6 feet at mean low water, right? Historically. Isn't that what?
Well,
Six
but
or
that
seven.
is,
We're doing
that's
7?
part of the question, which is what is the definition of reasonably navigable? Because as the fleet in the harbor has moved towards power boats, center consoles and stuff, there's less deep-keeled boats. And so it's just a question, I'm not advocating one way or the other, but it does seem to me a reasonable discussion about, do you need 6 feet at low tide or 5 feet at low tide, or is 4 feet enough? For all the center councils, 4 feet's plenty.
The only other piece I'll add to that is the rules now are we're able to maintain that whatever we did last time, 7 feet with an extra foot to 8. Who knows, 20 years from now, it could be, we're not dredging at all.
Well,
So
and
if you
that-
can get as much as you can out now,
That
you
dump
might be
site
ahead of
could
it.
be
right?
closed too.
Yeah, the dump, that's closed.
I personally thought that dump site was closed.
Nope.
Because when the yacht club did some maintenance dredging around the hoist and a couple of finger piers, do you remember when that was?
I
Flip?
think that was closed because that sediment was a little bit contaminated with
Oh.
with the bottom paint.
I thought I remembered something about it being closed because of, like they just wanted to shift things further out, but,
And they could
Yeah.
do that anytime they want
Yeah,
to. There's
yeah.
a western, a central, and
Yeah.
far east, and, you know, they could close one, pick one off, so,
Yeah.
which then gets more expensive the further we get up from the west side,
Yeah.
obviously.
Okay, do we have anything else for chairman's report, or?
Let's see. Are you gonna do the unified water? You want me to do the cleanup, or?
Yeah,
what do you-
I'll talk about the watershed. So,
Yeah, go ahead.
we got the results from seasons 22 and 23 of the Unified Water Study. They released Citizen released their report card. Our numbers sort of stayed about equal to what they've been in previous years, except the water clarity in Scotts Cove and Cove Harbor, basically an F grade. They were in the red, and
Did you
Darien
say-
Harbor was in the yellow.
an F grade?
Yeah.
Okay.
Failure. And then Darien Harbor was a C. So it's sort of an interesting result because the other numbers were Bs. I think overall Scotts Cove area was given a B grade, overall Darien Harbor was given a B, and overall Cove Harbor was given a B minus for all the different aspects of testing, which is dissolved oxygen, water clarity or turbidity. What else is there? There's chlorophyll A, salinity, macrophytes, so that would seaweed, growth, temperature. And Bill, you might be able to speak to this, but I think some of these grades we've seen before, in maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah,
or-
there's been some erratic stuff. I don't know if I've really ever seen a trend in all this.
Yeah.
So I don't really know what to make of the grades, either on an individual quality basis or the overall.
Yeah. Well, I've reached out to Safe the Sound and asked if they could sort of provide us with a trend line over maybe 10 years and to really reveal if anything's changing or if it's just, a bad impact from the last 2 years due to maybe changes in precipitation or nitrogen load. I think their main concern is the amount of nitrogen, probably with a lot of the increased precipitation events that's ending up in the sound and creating algae and other growth that creates a lack of water clarity, which is a problem because fish need to be able to see, to feed, and plants need light at the seaweed, need light at the bottom to grow and thrive. So, it's a concern to see sort of red F grades in two of our major areas, and the other one being a C grade for that aspect. But
Do they know what's causing the turbidity?
they think the nitrogen loading.
But like, we have extensive intertidal mud flats in our town that not that many other towns have. And it would be interesting to know if you actually sampled it and looked at it, is it algae or is it like mud? Muddy water.
I mean, I don't know if you could speak to that at all.
No, I've never heard them talk about the
Yeah.
qualitative factor of turbidity. I've never at all.
And it's sort of it's been a sort of a new, I don't think they were doing it in previous years.
No,
right?
they were.
Oh,
And
they were.
We had maybe 3 or 4 years ago a bad turbidity run. I think it was in Darien Harbor, and they wondered aloud because it was very pinpointed to a couple sample dates. If we had construction that was improperly, blocked off, not blocked off, and the runoff from that coming in. I sort of think that until you see trends multiple years, you don't know what to do with some of this data. And then once you might see a trend in a certain quality, then you need to go in and do more specific testing and analysis. So I think this is a little rough work in terms of just every 2 weeks. We should put all the years together, I think,
Yeah,
at this
well,
point.
that was a 2-year review.
That was a
so,
right,
yeah.
that's right, it's every 2 years.
So, but yeah, hopefully we'll get the numbers for the long-term trend, and maybe that'll be a little more informative.
And
we
the
can
peri-
some policy recommendations around that.
I mean, the period matters. I mean, is this only happening in July, August, and you can sort of match it up with construction in the area. That was the previous thought. So I think we probably should take a look at what we've got, which is the 8 years, and take
Yeah.
it down by month. Maybe that's a good project for a high school student in environmental science.
Yeah, and we'll see, we had 2 high schoolers out helping us water quality test. A sophomore and a rising junior. So that was really great to see the kids out on the water and get involved and.
It's early.
Yeah, well, it's funny, one of them's a rower, so she's like,
Oh.
oh, I'm always up at this hour, so that was, there's a little break from her rowing, but it was cool to have them out there, and they were really good and conscientious, and I sent a little write-up into the town newsletter, so you guys can look for that next week on it.
Is that turbidity, are you measuring that with a Secchi disc?
No.
How are you measuring that?
It's electric.
Okay.
I think it's a little.
It's a probe.
Light in the
Sensor,
probe.
or
Or
Gotcha.
something. Yeah, it's all done electronically.
I don't know, what's a Secchi disc?
It's a
Visual.
white disc with a little bit of a pattern on it that you lower down on a string.
Okay.
And the test is how far down can it go
Before
when
you
you
can't
stop
see it.
seeing it.
Oh,
First you take.
Really
well,
simple.
that's old school.
Yes.
Very simple.
Probably
It works
works
almost the
well,
same
but-
way each time. There's no
Probably costs-
calibration of
costs
that
a lot
thing.
less, right?
I was actually out this weekend twice, both Saturday and Sunday, and I was over in Scotts Cove on Saturday, and I happened to just look down over the stern, and I was amazed how clearly I could see my trim tabs.
It's very clear.
It's
Yeah.
very clear.
And then I was on Sunday, I went over with my brother and his whaler over to Kakini Island. And we were in the very far reaches of Kakini where it's sort of a circular. And I knew approximately what the tide was, and I'm looking over the side, and I said, I can see bottom. I should not be able to see bottom this time of day. So he had a 4-foot paddle, and I took the paddle, and I just reached over, and I put the paddle down till my wrist was in the water, and I could not touch the bottom. So I'm estimating I was able to see somewhere between 4.5 to 5.5 feet down, and I could see it very clearly too. I mean, I
Yeah.
could make out sand and mud and stone and everything like that, and I was like, I can't remember the last. I mean, that's like December, January clarity in October.
Well, there's been droughts, so you haven't had
Yeah.
rain bringing more nitrogen in the
Right.
last 3 weeks, so that helps it keep it a little bit clear, or even just mud, in the case may be, whatever
Yeah.
sediment.
It's great for kayaking. Like September and October, the motorboats go away and the
Right.
water gets clear, and it's
Yeah.
just beautiful out there. It's really,
Yeah.
really
No,
nice.
it was very nice out there.
Does, one other question on that is, doesn't Save the Sound also come back with beach closing ratings? And they,
Beach report, yeah.
yeah, the beach report, which to me is even more interesting to read, because now they're talking about serious bacteria, enough to close it down, which might correlate with some of the chlorophyll tests you have, but that's always another one when that comes out. Are they a year behind like this? I'm not sure.
I think they might have just come out with one.
I
We
thought
could,
they did.
we could bring it in
It's-
for
it's like-
next
That'd be
meeting.
interesting,
Three
and
or 6 months.
Look at
It's
it.
a little prior. It's off
Yeah.
the data that Mindy gets.
Right.
She goes regularly,
Yeah.
and that's filed at the state, and Save the Sound just downloads that, as we could, for example.
Be interesting if it's skewed somehow this year because there was that 4th of July weekend,
Right.
right? Where they closed on
Rainfall.
Thursday or Friday and then it was closed till Tuesday, I think, right?
Because the lab couldn't test the
Yeah,
results, the cleared out.
but I
data.
wonder if that'll skew it because it was, on paper, it looks like it was closed for
Four days or.
four or 5 days as opposed to, a testing the day after or the day after that. I don't know, maybe not.
Does somebody want to talk about the cleanup?
You want me to do it, or you want me to do it? All right, good. We got a lot of stuff out of there. It was great. So David and his wife Julie Kahn were there. Rob Roberto was there. Bill Cavers, Sam Bridges, Flip, and myself. And they did more work than I did. I spent time with, poor David because he couldn't do anything because of this concussion. But anyway, we pulled a lot of stuff up and down the river. Then we went over to the special spot over in Juniper Lane. Got a ton more. So it was very successful. It was a great day to do it. And it was a nice turnout.
How many pounds stuff?
225.
All right.
225.
Is that a record?
It's
I know
our
you keep it track.
Consistent record.
consistent.
That's right.
It's an estimate that keeps coming up.
And what was the most interesting thing pulled out of that?
100 feet of industrial hose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pneumatic hose or something else.
But it was,
It was a rock farm.
I think all of us agreed, tell me if you disagree, it was meaningfully cleaner
Right.
than prior years.
Oh, okay.
It was troubling to see these dead striped bass, but from a garbage point of view, it was meaningfully cleaner.
Agreed.
And the only piece I'll add to that, I had done a section over at Holly Pond the day before, and it was the same. It was a lot less. So both areas, different rivers, but they seem to have now.
Which might be just the lower rainfalls not washing stuff in as much.
Still plenty of Fireball bottles.
Yeah, no,
The nips?
there were not that many nips.
Weren't
What are
there?
those kids
weird.
drinking today?
Yeah, that's
Weird, everything's
It's all
changing.
gummies, yeah.
But there
Sooner
was lots of
migration.
little bits of styrofoam.
yeah.
So are there like key places that you go to each time knowing
Oh, yeah.
that's where you're going to find it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like catch basin.
That makes sense.
There are the Spartina grass and the high tide bush right at the high tide mark. That catches, wherever that stuff is, that catches a lot.
I see.
And then there are other, what I'll call elbows or cul-de-sacs in the river where if you've got the wind blowing, it blows it into those areas, that never gets out.
I see.
So it just accumulates.
I'll just point, I think this is a really neat thing that we do twice a year now. We seem to have it as sort of a tradition. And I'll just point out, I think we still could enlarge its impact by more publicity, but also by like maybe arraying the things and counting them per category, like what are polluting our waters. Pictures and letting the town know. You could even get high school students involved. So just have more description of what we're pulling and how it's changing through the
What, does
seasons.
somebody want to write next week's article for the newsletter? And,
I'm not going to volunteer for
and
that, sorry, but
well, it's your idea.
it was my idea. I've done it
I mean,
before. I
but
have
we
written
could-
a
we
thing
could-
before.
You could include a picture. It really only takes like half an hour to write an
But
article.
I will say that in my mind, this year was much less interesting in terms of
was.
the composition of the garbage than in prior years. And because a part of being cleaner is what we're picking up is smaller, like old pieces of styrofoam that are kind of unidentifiable as to what they even were from.
But if that's a trend, boy, it would be
If
neat
that,
to
yeah,
note
Yeah.
that.
Be
and there were
I don't know.
many fewer
Put out of
beverage
business.
bottles than in the past.
Yeah, I agree. A lot less water
But
bottles,
it was smaller stuff that was frequently not
Which
identifiable.
is like the most dangerous for marine life.
Which is stuff that has been out there and is being knocked around for a
Yeah.
long time, but it's not that interesting to talk about.
But then that's the stuff that, the microplastics that end up in your heart or your brain. When you
You know-
eat a striped bass.
You know, I heard if we get to the point ever that we decide we want to write an article like this, I heard that in Nantucket, in the harbor, if you take the sand and look at it under a magnifying glass or a microscope, that you see that many of the particles that you think are sand are actually small pieces of plastic.
Really?
And that's something we ought to just do at Pear Tree Point or Wheat Beach is to see, are there small pieces of plastic in our
Yeah.
waters?
Maybe we could get
Just
one of the environmental teachers.
Yeah,
to-
project.
Just broken down larger
Yeah,
pieces
little
that have
things
been.
that are the size of a grain of sand and that frankly look like sand.
Yeah.
But it's that's kind of an interest. if we saw that, that would also be kind of newsworthy and be worth getting into that same article that Bill's going to write.
Thanks, Bill.
It really.
Write that down, please,
15
Grant.
minutes.
Don't make eye contact, Bill.
Looking down.
I know where you live. So
But
that's-
actually, if you have those high school students, maybe they could just take a couple cups of sand or something
Analyze
into
it.
the high school and look at them and see what they see.
We lost one to Deerfield.
Oh, okay.
And the other one, I already have him working on a video project.
Okay,
It
so
might be overtaxed.
something else.
If somebody else has a high school that they want to volunteer.
If they babysit, I will talk to them for sure.
Are you talking to any of the teachers in the environmental science? Is that where these students came from? Have you made a connection there?
No, one of the students came, her father had contacted Save the Sound, and so we got her, that sort of circuitous route.
Yep.
And the other one is a friend from the Land Trust son. I talked to her about the water quality testing, and she thought her son might be interested in getting involved, and so it's just sort of word of mouth. But we should do that.
Yeah, because that's the last time we had the high school science teachers involved, they were tasked with actually going out and doing the water quality testing, which was really tough for them because they lived half an hour to an hour away, and now you're asking them to come back on a Saturday morning because they couldn't do it during the weekday and test. So it didn't work as a
Yeah.
process. But maybe to enlist them, in supplemental projects surrounding, like analyzing our data, doing a study of the silt release from Gorham's Pond. I don't know what that might yield. The sand. There's maybe a lot of projects
Yeah,
they could design around what we're bumping into.
Maybe we should, maybe we should.
I'd be happy to join a meeting, not initiate it, but join it. So,
We could figure out something. I think, so just to segue to the Great Islands focus groups, I was participated in the ecology one, and there were 2 educators from town, one from the Nature Center and one from the high school. So there's a potential connection there, and they are interested in doing, nature-based projects, obviously, in town. So, yeah, I think we should definitely, as team, follow up on that.
sounds good. Let's talk about that. That'd be good.
Yeah, and Bill, you were also on the ecology call. Was anyone else on the ecology? And then John, Bill and I were on the water call today. And is anyone else on that? Okay. I don't know if anyone wants to, I left a little early.
Yeah,
You wanna-
I can add a little bit.
This isn't with regards to Great Island.
This is Great Island, and they had like a subgroup talking about different ecology the other day, and today was water. And they just kind of opened it up and talked about what they saw very generally, and then they were asking for input from others. And so one of the first things, one of the items that came out, I wanted to make sure they had gotten all of the stuff we had written, because I'd asked Monica to send that on, and they did say they had it. They didn't sound like they referenced any of it. We had to kind of bring up our subjects again.
Which you did well.
We haven't
Tried,
put
but
it in a file.
it's a very peripheral what we're doing though, and I brought it up that bothered me a little bit, that we need to have more intimate relationship with these people so we can really get down to the nuts and bolts, not just flinging stuff out. Because I worry about they work at they take some items from people they hear and they start writing up almost policy, it seems like, and it's way too early for that. That's what I sensed when I went to the ecology one. You may not have sensed the same. And it's like, we're not getting enough input from people that really know, and not just little fling from surveys. So that's my feeling. We got a lot of stuff across today, but is it going to be handled? And I hope that we can get some of us right there in their office or out on the site and really walk through these things so they understand what we really feel and that we know we're experts at.
Yeah.
So.
Surveys are an interesting tool because how surveys are drafted sort of inform the answers you get.
Yep.
And I personally felt the survey was skewed, to amplify more development, more people, more events versus, championing the beauty and the nature, and I felt like that was a miss because it was misleading in presentation, at least maybe it wasn't intentionally misleading, but I think that it reflected some other surveys they've done on other properties. I just think Great Island is a different kind of property and maybe could have benefited from a different format of survey.
I think my wife thought that, sorry, I didn't mean to step on you, but my wife thought that same thing, that there were a lot of questions about all these grand things
Yep.
and less focus or questions on keeping the minimalist approach, right?
Yes.
And, I think that is the most appealing thing to it, is less is more with that unspoiled piece of property, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I've heard from a lot of people I've spoken to. I'm sure there are people who, want more activities there, but I think there's a strong feeling for just preserving the nature.
I don't think you can count on the consultant, though, to be a shield for the nature or even be a proponent of it. I think they are, I'm not saying they're not competent, I just think they're a mechanic for the decision maker, which is ultimately the town board of selectmen, maybe with the advisory committee in there. I think this is a totally political process, and it's about applying pressure and how much pressure we can get towards the nature preservation versus how much pressure is for the program stuff and polo matches. So honestly, I feel like the Reed Hildebrand, is that it? They pay the right lip service to all the nature points, conservation points, preservation of coast points, but they're just rolling through a process which their bosses, the Board of Selectmen who've hired them, have set them about to do. Collect data and then shape it as the Board of Selectmen wants it to be shaped. I'm not trying to be cynical. I just think that's the nature of a consultant. They're trying to please their boss. And I think we're just going to have to keep on inputting where we can to try to get the nature be stronger.
When we hired consultants, they wanted to know what our outcome was ahead of time, so.
Yeah, they're just
Yeah.
paving the way, if you will, and doing it in a palatable way to the town.
Yep.
So it looks like, I'm not trying to be cynical again, so it appears and is a participatory process, but it's being steered already, so.
I would note, I agree with your take on, especially today, on the input they're seeking, because it was safety issues, swimming, paddleboarding, boating, access, I do feel like people were just throwing out things versus, these are really important issues that need to be addressed comprehensively, rather than in a 1-hour focus group where you're just sort of
Yeah.
throwing out the thoughts that are
Because
top of
what they
line.
what we heard somewhere along the line, they had spent quite a bit of time with the number of professionals in this town hall, Department of Public Works, and a bunch of other ones. So that was a different type of scenario than we had in our 1 hour. And they took a lot of that away, and at the Great Island meeting that I was listening to, that 3.5 hour one, a lot of that pushback came back from some, the commissioners saying, don't just listen to them, they're professionals, but they may not have the right ideas, so. Anyway, losing my voice over this. In any case.
I thought one of the most interesting lines of the call today was Julie's. She noted that a federal law requires a 330-foot diameter zone around an eagle's nest, and that we wouldn't want to be breaking the law by doing anything, building paths, et cetera, within that zone, which I thought was just
It's too late.
I think so. It's a small island for eagles staying there of all the people that are going to come on.
There have been, I don't know if you guys have seen them, but last week, there were 2 eagles just soaring like buzzards kind of over Narodin Yacht Club, then they went over towards the boat club. It was really, I've never seen them just soaring, 2 of them together.
Next time, take a video.
It was they were kind of high like buzzards would be, and so you could see they were white on the head and white on the tail, but it was really cool.
Yeah.
But to lose those,
Do you think they're looking for a new home?
and I do think there's also an immature eagle that's flying around town.
There's a what?
immature eagle that
Really?
was, yeah.
Yeah, I saw a couple
Wow,
sub-adults
very
in
cool.
the Scott Cove area.
Yeah.
On one of the little islands they had like a little feeding nest. It was like a little ancillary nest.
So, but I mean, the eagle's nest is like an interesting question, because that's something, whether it's the 360-foot, whatever it is, we ought to be not talking about that. We ought to be doing something about that to keep people away. And we're not, as a town, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, and that was my point, is that I after the Great Island meeting the other night where it was brought up, I Googled it, and it is punishable by fines and jail time. If you're, it includes disturbing the eagles, which is an undefined term, to disturb, but when they asked the ecologist to opine on that, he said, yeah, like, people walking by with a dog, yeah, you could disturb. And, that path wasn't accessible until recently, and they opened that up. And, this is a federally protected species. This isn't, like, you can't be like, our town, we can do what we want. So
Yeah.
we'll see. But the information was put out there by the ecologist for the consultant. It was made available to the Board of to the Great Island Commission, the Board of Selectmen, and the entire town. So it's out there, and so hopefully people are paying attention.
Yeah, so I mean, the consultant will raise that, put that fact on the table, but they're not gonna, jump on their sword over that.
They're not gonna say we should stop this.
We're stopping work, yeah. So, that's the frustrating thing of a consultant. They're led, but anyway.
Well, you can't say you didn't know about it if you get accused of the crime once it's on public record. So you've got a liability.
Was there any conversation
Town
with the road
liability.
progress and what is happening with that?
Sorry, say that
The
again?
road progress, and
No.
sort of off
No.
topic for us, but
It was distinctly not talked about, at least the access point.
yeah.
There was discussion about making the road around there instead of one-way, two-way, and that was pushed back by some of the commissioners saying that's not appropriate. Some of the Department of Public Works think it is, so there'll be a little debate on that.
And there was some discussion of where parking
Parking will be another matter.
may go. I
So-
think they
so-
were thinking by the stables, maybe.
So circling back to our list, what do you think the next steps with our list to try to?
I think we're going to have to, as you say, be a little pushy and possibly get some of the names of the, and I think you might even have a few of those contacts, and I'd be glad to send them an email and say, when are we going to meet together as a couple of us or three of us to talk about details on our thoughts, either up at their New Haven location or on site, and, to push it and say, that 1 hour didn't really mean anything other than gets a few things out. Their answer will probably be, oh, there's more time for that, we're going to get more details as we go further on down. It's always, you're always backpedaling when you get in those situations, so.
After the train has left the station.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and I'm curious to know what the level of priority is for the off-island investment in consulting time.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
I mean,
off-island?
like on water, the on water versus
Sorry,
like the,
yeah.
I know they're having this focus group, but, most of the activities that have been talked about seem to be focused on land,
Yeah,
right? So it's sort of, how much time are they gonna invest, or how much energy in the water-based stuff? They may just let it, you could even just let it function like it already functions, right? That's the default,
right.
but.
John, what did you get out of that meeting today?
Well, one of the things they did raise was they talked about the existing dock, the possibility of adding a second dock by the boathouse. Seeing that one of the docks is already gated because they were starting to get, I guess, traffic through there already, which is supposed to be the fireboat dock.
Yeah, so there's no dock that can be used by the public at this point.
No,
Not a dinghy dock
there
of any
isn't.
sort.
No. I'm not trying to. I gotta be
Never mind.
I gotta be
Okay, let's-
careful. But the
yeah.
thing is, if
We'll
you
talk
start, if
somebody
you
else.
start doing a dinghy dock, now you're talking about access to the island.
Right.
Who's supposed to be accessing it? Because the people who are in Ziegler's Cove are not all from Darien.
Yeah,
Is it a
okay,
town
issue.
park? Now you've got, is there a sticker? Is there going to be sticker? I don't know. But when you start opening up access, that is that's not from the road anymore. Now it's from the water. And you're going to get people who aren't from Darien. I don't know if that's an issue or it's not an issue. But just things to consider. That's what I think about when you start putting a dock in there. And, you know, are you going
And
to
those
put
could
limits
be
on it?
access at all hours of the day.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Look,
You know,
most everyone at this table has done enough time on the water and cruised enough to know that we're not the first ones to face this, and that many of us, if not everyone here, has been on a boat, gotten into a dinghy, and gone to a public dock or a marina and gotten onto a dock and walked on. And like, I mean, it's the old thing, like not in my backyard, but if you stop letting it in your backyard, then no one's gonna have it. What if you can't go to Port Jeff and pull up to a dinghy dock, or you can't go to Oyster Bay or Sag Harbor or any of these places, right? Todd's point, same here, like,
Well, I don't think any of us are advocating necessarily one way or the other on it, other than
It's just
the
things to
land-based
think about.
policies probably should be consistent with the
yeah.
Right.
ocean-based policies.
and I'm just sort of saying the same thing. I'm not advocating one or the other. I guess if you just look at it, like as a water person, you're like, I don't know, like, it'd be nice to be able to do that.
I mean, what we threw out today was, it has to be addressed.
Yeah.
People are gonna wanna get onto that property. How is it, but I don't have an answer, people don't really have the answers right now, but how is it gonna be managed? You know, how are people gonna wanna get on there? Are they gonna take up space, or where their boats go, bathrooms? But it's gotta be addressed, and they need to do that. They don't want, it didn't seem like it was brought up until it kind of threw it out in this meeting. You can't
And the
ignore it.
reality is that the Ziegler's Cove boating community, certainly on any given Friday or Saturday night, has a higher state of intoxication than most other just,
Sure.
anchor your boat and take your dinghy on shore. So it is a little bit of an attractive nuisance.
I wonder if there's anyone in that consulting group that, I'm sure there are pockets divided up, right? Like ecological, the land, the historical, whatever, who has any knowledge or experience on the water, And like maybe that's someone who you try and have a conversation with, instead of someone who is not a boater, who that they're not a swimmer, they're not a kayaker, they're not a powerboater or sailboater, right? Maybe they're a race car driver, right? This means nothing to them. But if you have someone who understands waterways and that a bit, maybe it becomes more relatable? Maybe not?
I agree with you completely.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it would be a worthwhile exercise for us as a group between now and our next meeting to come up with our own list of, like a forced list of the 10 most important water-related issues in our own minds as it relates to Great Island. And then in our next meeting, sort it out so that indeed this represents the will of the commission. These are the 10 most important issues that we see affecting the water.
But that sort of is the list we've already come up with.
Well-
It's not, I don't know if it's 10 or more, probably more.
Well, it may be, and maybe I'm missing something, but it seems to me that right now, these meetings that you guys are just attending, we either perhaps need to resubmit that list or else create one now that we've got kind of a greater knowledge of what's going on, so that we are kind of one voice when we participate in a tour or in a meeting with the Board of Selectmen, or if there are any meetings with the consultants up in New Haven. and make sure that we don't kind of forget something that's really important to us.
Well, I think the challenge, maybe frustration, that a number of us are feeling is not so much that we don't have consensus on the list of issues. I don't think we've come to conclusion about how you resolve the issues. Many of those include policy decisions that you could come out either way on. But it's trying to figure out a process where we feel like we can meaningfully interact with the decision makers on these. We keep getting shoehorned into hour-long focus groups where people are sort of chip-shotting on things, and it's not feeling like there's a detailed, thoughtful conversation of the actual issues. And it's not so much the list of issues. We all know it's like access to the water, how you can fish, all that stuff, where the small boats are going to go in Ziegler's Cove, but it's how do you sit down and actually have a thoughtful discussion about where is the right place for the town to end up with on those. That's the frustration I feel.
Well, if they were having these in-depth meetings with, like, town work people, why can't we say, request a
Same thing.
meeting, a one-on-one with us? And,
Like to act as an advisory
Yeah.
committee
Yeah.
to the Board of Selectmen. Yeah.
and to the
On water.
consultants.
Well, yeah, the consultants is a filter, though. I'd rather go right to decision makers. If there's a channel, we can better establish that.
Yeah, I mean, true. I don't know, yeah. I'm not sure what the right approach is to get in front of that and be heard. I don't know if anyone else has a good thought on it. Who the right-
Maybe that's the point. Sadly.
But we should try. So maybe an email to the Board of Selectmen?
Well, yes, but let's think about just exactly what we want to say. The most important things that we think should be communicated to us in our advisory, communicated to them in our advisory capacity, and kind of husband our powder, and try to make 5 good points is better than 10 points that aren't paid attention to. So I'd just like to think about it.
Oh, yeah. Can I put you on the task force to draft the email with input from others?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
But it would not be any value if we didn't have input from,
Of course.
all the
No,
members.
we want everybody on the same
And-
page, for sure.
the vision is, it's the commission going to JZ plus 4,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
This is what we think.
this is why we're coming to you this way.
Are issues worth discussing, and we'd like to be, or some of us anyway, representing the commission would like to be dialed in more with the consultants when you can do it.
There's another session, public session coming up on islands. There was one like a month and a half or so ago. I wonder if we can have our commission attend together and have sort of a special water cut. Walk around and talk about some of the water issues with the consultants. If
Yeah.
that would be a little subgroup they could deal with.
I will say personally, having attended some of the Great Island meetings, and I don't know how you feel, Bill, like when we started off, we asked if we could sit at the table, because we were invited to the meeting, we were told no.
Because you're ex officio, right, to the
Yeah.
committee, yeah.
Yeah,
And-
someone wrote that in that we were supposed to be,
Yeah,
but it never occurred.
Yeah, it never, in practicality, I've never felt like we were ever welcome to make comments in the meeting.
Absolutely.
Felt quite the
Really?
opposite.
Absolutely.
We were more there to listen and then we presented in the written form, but nobody ever followed up with us on the submission with any sort of questions or
Would it be another approach?
discussion.
This may not be the world's greatest idea, but would it be, is there any merit to the idea of trying to seek a meeting with the consultant? And any member of the Board of Selectmen who wants to join us is welcome. And if we could find a consultant who had the boating experience that Grant was talking about, then we would find someone who understood what we were talking about.
Maybe, because we're all just kind of thinking about this, and I'm not sure how far that's going to get any of us. Maybe we should just have a conversation with Jay-Z or with people on the Great Island Commission to say, how can we contribute
helpful.
to this more meaningfully? Because we're feeling like we're not contributing to it right now, and see what they recommend as a process. Because, I mean, maybe we should approach it that way, because we all have our own individual ideas of how we'd like to do it, but I don't know which one is right. We're all struggling.
You could very much end up hearing from that like, you're doing what we want you to do.
Well,
And-
yeah,
and
so
like-
there's the answer.
You know, like, may not be the answer you want, but that could be the answer they provide. It's like, we read your list, thank
Yeah.
you. Or you could also, to your point, you could also find out that maybe we're supposed to be heard in a different way, and it comes from a more authentic authority, right? It's options for both.
I don't know what the right answer is, but my intuition is drafting emails and sending them is not going to get us where we want to get to.
That you guys
Right.
aren't feeling you're part of the
I agree
advisory.
with that, Flip. I just want, I mean, it was the same thing, Julie, that happened when we had that misunderstanding with Jay-Z about, I just called him up. I just picked up the phone, called him up, and said, what's going on? And it all changed. So I think it's a good idea. He's supposed to be our liaison. We should just call him. I'm happy to call him and say, we don't feel like we're being heard for this this issue, or just go knock on Monica's door.
Okay.
Go for it, Rob. That'd be my
Okay.
opinion.
But it is the first thing to suggest that you both participate, or one of you participate as an ex officio on the advisory committee, and you're allowed to talk.
But I think what Rob's saying, if Jay-Z is involved and now realizes, we're feeling this way, if he cares about this, he will now make a motion to Monica to say, hey, use them.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I mean, it's a shame if we're not used, right? We have all this
Yeah.
expertise.
Totally. That's what he
Yeah.
said before to all of us. So
Yeah.
I'll call him tomorrow.
Yeah, perfect. A perfect example that came up today was they had no idea, as far as I can see, when John Kina mentioned to them, you can't stop people from going up on that beach up to the high tide mark. Because there's rumor the town doesn't want to make it a beach. Okay, well then you're going to have boats going right up to it, and they are perfectly legal. They didn't know that. John Kina had to mention that stuff. So there's a ton of stuff they don't know. That's my opinion. So yeah, Rob, we all feel Rob should make a phone call?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
Okay.
Great,
I'll
thanks.
take it tomorrow.
Thank you, Rob.
See what happens when you don't show up in person?
But I agree with Sam that we need to be on the same page on what we're offering,
Yeah, we
right?
can, should we redistribute that list and then convene a discussion on it?
Yeah, a special meeting on that?
Yeah.
Because I think one of the hardest decisions we have to, or one of the pieces they may ask us is, well, how do you think you should handle people coming off the boats and going onto the island? And I'm not sure I know how to answer that at all. And it's something that maybe we ought to, let's assume they say anybody can come on from any town, we don't care about it. But how are we going to handle that with where the boats go, how they come in, where do they stop, can they use the bathroom, can they, And I don't know if we are that, or the consultant should help us do that decision.
Well, but
we'll.
the first thing you need to decide is basically, is Great Island going to be open both by land and by sea?
Right.
To
So we have to make some
residents of
assumptions.
other towns.
Right.
And that's a decision the town, the Board of Selectmen or the advisory board needs to make. And
So
then
that's one.
Once you
Yeah.
make that decision,
One
that
leads to
will
the
have,
other, right?
that will have implications for how much dockage you need, or what, bathrooms near the docks, or
So our
whatever.
first decision might be, do we think we should have access to the shore from a boat? I mean, that's something we all should think of.
To begin with, you can't, let's go back to the beach discussion.
Right.
You can't say no to, they can't come above high tide
Right.
if you decide not to let them
But
come.
can we let them step off the boat or not?
Yes, totally.
Right. So.
You don't have a choice, and that's not a decision.
Okay, so we'll try to figure out a time for a special meeting just to talk about those issues. Do you want to talk about, just to send this around?
Oh, well,
Oh, this one, sorry, this one. Do you want to talk about
oh,
this
yeah, I can just
briefly?
Yeah, briefly say this was, hopefully we set this around, this was, I guess, was it Molnar himself, the guy who works up in Milford at CT Deep. In any event, a Mako shark was seen off of, I forget where, was it off Clinton, I think it was? Yeah.
With breakwater, yeah.
Yeah, which is pretty exciting for Long Island Sound. But the point of this article was with the size of the sound as it is, and its proximity to lots of migrating fish in deeper ocean waters. That's not an unusual thing. We've got squid, we've got cetaceans that are coming through. 3 types of dolphins are coming through. And the point is, this is a real vibrant piece of water that's getting cleaner and more full of menhaden and other forage fish. Forage fish, the things that get them.
No, that's the bait, that's the bait.
Yeah, okay, bait
Bunker.
fish.
Bunker.
So I thought this was really good in, I just read it today, and I thought this was just really great to highlight how this is a real living sea and not the urban, dead sea that a lot of people, I think, who are not aware of the sound assume it is. And I just think it highlighted lots of the different species that you just wouldn't expect in our area, and that have been seen more increasingly over the last 5 or so years, 10 years. Yeah. So it's a great article.
And then,
And the Molnar guy who did the sighting talked
the
about.
great whites,
Oh,
yeah.
well, the Molnar guy was the guy I talked to about, he was the biologist who came down here
Oh, really?
and looked at the
Oh, okay.
Gorham Pond issue. Yeah, and what's your, and he's an open connection, by the way, for future issues, should we have one of these things that happen, to get a fish right away and send it up to him, he'd be glad to test. 3 or 4 days later, they thought was too late. And my fish was sort of dead and dry, the thing I'd gotten.
Yeah, they're kind of disgusting now when you see them.
It was nicer when it was dead and dry, easier to bag. In the article mentioned that there was a great white sighted here. This was like 3 or 4 years ago. Could have even been 5.
There was one in Greenwich, like.
That was in Greenwich.
That was
and
a false
Ocean, and it was
That
Oh,
was a
false.
false.
Oh.
And you sort of figure the operator tag of like, what's the real story? Is it real or not? But I met the head researcher. It was in Nantucket, and he was, the O-Search boat was off Nantucket
Right.
for weeks at a time or
Yeah.
something. They were coming back and forth. And I met him waiting to take a launch out to it. And I started asking him about his work, and I discovered he was the head researcher. And I said, oh yeah, you guys tagged a great white. And he looked at the ground, he shook his head, and he said, man, that was a goof up, although he used different words. And he explained that just it was on the other side, and something about their software or something just misinterpreted.
Oh, okay.
And so he said it's not even remotely.
The blip was on the
Yeah, he said
map and-
he said that they did not come out and admit it was a mistake in the weeks thereafter, because it would have been sort of damaging to the program.
Yeah.
But they did change the data to indicate, to show that it never was in the south.
Yeah.
So,
Okay,
Good.
Well, we need more seals before that'll change.
yeah.
right.
Yeah, I was at Cape Cod for the first time in years, and that whole is a different environment. I mean,
It's like the beaches are black with seals.
you think differently kayaking, you think differently body surfing.
So I did a,
You don't.
I was
No,
up,
the people in the water, I went in the water, but there were
Oh,
seals
yeah.
outside of me. I saw surfers outside of the seals, which I thought was idiocy. Always make sure that the thing that wants to be getting eaten is between you and the shark.
so I did
Need
a
a
great white
buffer.
shark tour off of Chatham, right before Labor Day this year. And we went out of Pleasant Bay. It was like a perfect day, no wind, except there was fog coming from the south. So we go out and they had the spotter planes up above, and they said the fog's coming in, go north and go. So we drove maybe 30, 40 minutes north trying to get away from the fog. And then we saw the shark,
Sharktivity.
the shark boat, the local biologist there, and one of the other shark tourist boats. And so the spotter plane said, yeah, they've got a shark down there. So it was interesting because the whole way up Nauset Beach, there's no one on the beach. It's because you can't access it unless by car. All the sharks that we saw, and there were 5 of them in the water,
Wow.
off the busiest spot of land where all the surfers were, all the bathers, everybody was on shore. There were 2 seals, one big seal in the water, one on the beach. I've got video, 17-foot great white.
Really?
Yeah, I have video of all of them, but they apparently they usually only see one at a time because they don't like to hunt, but they were all off Marconi Beach.
Marconi Beach, yeah.
And as the fog rolled in, the other 2 boats left, and we were the last one, and the spotter plane couldn't see anything, so he's like, should just head out. And the surfers must have thought because all the boats left that the sharks had left. The sharks were only 100 feet off the beach, and the surfers were 300 feet off the beach by the time we left.
Yeah.
And we were beeping at them like, you should get out of the water. But it was, there's big fish.
But those sharks are there every day, though. Whether you can see them or not, they're
Yeah.
there every day. And those guys are in the water with them every day.
No one at this table's getting back in the water.
I'm never swimming off Nauset Beach ever again after seeing that. I was 100 feet off the beach.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
Thank you.
They could stay out of the sound for now. Anyway, it was pretty cool if anybody ever gets up there to do that.
Where's the boat go out of?
It goes out of Wequassett Resort. It's like right off, there's a dock there.
And that's
It
at
says
Pleasant Bay,
Bay.
yeah.
And you go out through the cut.
The cut there.
And then, they just have the plane go up and
That's cool,
chase
yeah.
down. And, inside Pleasant Bay is where all the seals are up on the island. So
Right.
they're
Right,
hiding
inside, yeah.
from, yeah.
I was kayaking in Barnstable Harbor, and I couldn't get my wife to get anywhere near the entrance because there were seals just on the outside, and the Sharktivity sighting like within a tenth of a mile of
She's
the
no
entrance.
fool.
No, she was smart. I still wanted to go, but anyway.
So I think the only thing left was there was this application to improve the seawall and the foundations of Six Pratt Island. I don't know if anyone has any commentary.
It's no big deal.
Yeah, I think they need to do it to keep the house standing, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, they didn't bring any reaction to me either.
it seemed like they were making it a conscientious process, from what I read. Motion?
Well, I got,
There was one other thing.
Oh,
yeah, go
okay.
ahead.
Yeah.
You going?
I just wanted to say, I took advantage of the invite that we got to go to Greens Ledge Lighthouse.
Oh, yeah.
And that was.
Did you like it?
It's phenomenal, absolutely
Attaboy.
phenomenal, the work that they've
Glad
done.
you went.
The work, yeah, I'm glad I did. But ran into a couple of people that I hadn't seen in quite some time that were involved with the project. But what I also, in addition to what I learned about, and I took a lot of pictures and, listened to some of the history and asked a few questions. But I also ran into one of the 2 gentlemen, spoke to both of the 2, I guess, gentlemen that are probably, from the inception of restoring it. One of them is now involved, the Stanford Lighthouse has been purchased. And Stanford Lighthouse is approximately 20 years older than Green's Ledge. And it has much more of Victorian flair. And he was actually showing me some of the pictures, the differences between Green's Ledge and the Stanford Light. And Green's Ledge is what you would call like a resto mod, if you're talking like car-esque. A resto mod where, you know, to make it as original but also make it as up to date as possible. The idea, he told me, behind the Stanford Light is just going to be a restoration to bring it back to what it was. It actually has, as bad as it looks when you go by it, it's actually in much better shape than Green's Ledge was from the start. But there's a lot of Victorian decor and decoration, ironworks and stuff like that they're going to restore, which I thought was great.
It's that same deal, the light needs to be kept going, that's the government accounting office has sold it
I
with.
think so. You know, they still operate. One of the things they did have was they had two of the previous lights that were, you know, up in the lantern area for Green's Ledge. They didn't have any of the original Fresnel, but they had the other two lights that were there. But they had, you know, they had a heating system, sewage system, reverse osmosis water maker. No, I take that back. No, it was a filtration system. But it's pretty self-sufficient. It's really nice.
Are they getting some business? Are they renting it out? Is it?
Well, I had heard it's like $3,500 a night to stay there, so I don't know how many people will be staying. But
Could you, like, I heard you could rent it out for 2 hours.
Yeah.
You have 6 people and you
well,
can
they've had
bring
two.
your own.
It told me
You can
they've
have
had
an
2
event.
weddings there so far.
Oh, wow, that's
Yeah.
cool.
They had the Stanley Cup
the Stanley
presentation
Cup
out there,
presentation,
you know,
yeah.
and a lot of stuff, yeah.
I had a friend ran it for her birthday the other day.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are people definitely doing it, and the higher donors, you know, it's all tiered, right? And the higher ones, there's a small group of people up there, kind of have access to it. They can kind of come and go as they please and stuff, and it's pretty neat. I mean,
It's
I've done a number
impressive.
of events out there.
Yeah,
It's
it's pretty
fun.
cool.
They've done a great job, and they're working to buy like a landing craft. With like kind of like the drop down front thing that they can bring up to the beach and load people on and load materials on, and then that'll be able to go out there and help with supply and demand.
And not only that, they have visions, I was out there the same time as John.
Yeah.
And the fella who is organizing the landing craft was the skipper of the boat that brought Joanna and I out, and he had a chance to talk about it. They envision, you know, in the realm of the possible, maybe even bringing that landing craft over to Pear Tree or to Weed and picking people up and taking them out to the lighthouse.
Long
Or,
term,
for that matter, to Great Islands Beach.
That's right.
below high water.
Blast that thing.
I think long term, there's a real drive to continue to fulfill that educational component of it. I mean, that's the bottom level, is like an educational kind of history education, like sea life, maritime connection as well.
And
And
sound-
they do bring some maritime aquarium boats.
Sound Waters has been sending kids out there twice a week during
Yeah.
the summer, so they've already got that established.
Yeah,
That's nice.
yeah.
So it's a nice deal.
So they're very community focused. And they do a lot for the community, the guys that are, and gals that are involved in it.
Yeah, I can't remember the gentleman's name, Tim,
P-E-T-T.
Pettit.
How do you say it?
yeah, Tim Pettit, is that Tim Pettit?
Yeah.
Okay. He's actually going to be hosting a speech at the Museum of Darien Historical Society.
There you go.
Coming up, I believe it's next month. So he's going to be talking about the Lighthouse project there at the annual meeting.
Perfect.
Yeah,
You should get the date on that one. Send it around.
I will.
Okay.
I will.
And I could add one other kind of tying into that. There's a partnership right now between Norton Yacht Club, Darien Boat Club, and the Power Squadron, and they have 3 seminars coming up. This one, a lot of you probably know, this Wednesday, they're going to have emergency systems, so they'll have the Darien Police, Marine Police, Post 53, and the fire department are all going to be at this. It's the Norotan Yacht Club hosting it. There's going to be refreshments. And that's one of the three they're going to have. There'll be a second one a couple weeks later. I'll send, you can all probably mostly know, but you can pass these around if you haven't. Second one is on motorboat maintenance. There's a guy that's very adept at that. He's going to give one. And then the third one will be a doctor out of Bridgeport on how to save a life before the EMS gets there on a boat. So I think it's a great idea that Norotan Yacht Club is going to host it, and all the other groups are coming together for it. Hopefully we get a big crowd, for what it's worth.
You were referring to something else.
Yes, we were.
What do you mean? Sorry.
We weren't talking about the shark.
I thought you were, you sent an article around about the abundance of shark and other animals, but you were referring to the Coastal Resiliency Coalition.
I can't.
Yes,
Right, which I didn't talk about.
we didn't talk about that.
Do you want me to give a 2-second on it?
Sure.
Okay, so, my apologies, I sort of looked at this and was blotted out. So the Coastal Restoration Coalition is something that got funding from the Long Island Sound Funders Collaborative, which is, got some EPA-backed money and has a bunch of nonprofits which distribute money for good causes around sound, environmental things. And they've gotten together and funded a group which is modeling after Save the Sound's River Restoration Coalition, which is going through Connecticut and trying to take out dams and do other good acts for rivers. So this has a nice group of people that have joined together, institutions. The Maritime Center, Sarah Crosby is involved, Nature Conservancy, Save the Sound, Sound Waters. There's one or two other major nonprofits involved, and I'm just forgetting who they all are. And they're just starting to try to figure out plans that would, they'd be able to bring like templates and programmatic ideas to municipalities in the Connecticut coast to restore coastal environments. So this is like making natural barriers with replanting of salt marshes and that type of thing.
I mean, this would be it's timing wise, I don't know, but for the Great Islands consultants and the commission.
It could be something that could really have some relevance.
Yeah.
This is another offshoot of what's really been happening up and down Long Island Sound. There was the Sustainable and Resilient Communities Committee established on the Long Island Sound study. It got a $5 million chunk of budget from the EPA, and it's hired right away. It's 5 or 6 what they call riders, shuttle riders or something. These are professional biologists who are going around to the municipalities on the New York side and the Connecticut side of Long Island and suggesting resilience and restoration projects on the shores of towns. They're trying to act as consultants for the municipalities to give them some ability to plan out projects to help with the inundation problems that are happening, the things that are forecasted to happen in this century. So there's money flowing there. There's money flowing from the Long Island Sound Funders Collaborative. They're all chasing large funds that are coming in, have come to our area, like through the infrastructure bill, that are all focused on coastal resiliency. So it really makes your mind start to race about what should we be doing, what should we be looking at for grants, who we should be partnering with. And I think the biggest thing this says to me is that you shouldn't just be Darien. You may be wanting to fix Darien waters, but the bodies you should be dealing with are really coalitions, because there's a lot of money and a lot of effort being focused on this. And
our watershed is shared with Stamford and
Norwalk.
Norwalk.
Yeah.
And probably New Canaan.
And New
to some
Canaan, too.
degree,
Yeah.
Definitely New Canaan.
So it's
And, I believe Norwalk got $40 million this year to plant trees. It's an enormous amount of money. I mean, obviously, they're an urban center and
40 million?
$40 million.
you don't want to act as an
They could
island.
dredge Darien
right now.
Harbor.
This is not. It's not the time to just be thinking as an island. You have
Yeah,
to be,
I agree,
yeah.
we should be partnering.
I'm having lunch with Sarah Crosby in about 3 weeks' time, and one of our agenda items was, hey, what's this, and what are you doing? So if I find anything interesting.
Yeah, and ask her how we, as a group, can get tied into all these. These are powerful, I mean, Ducks Unlimited, I mean, there's some
Yeah,
big
that's
deals
right,
here
that's
going
that's
on.
involved, yeah.
And if we can figure out how do we connect into that? you know?
And they're all very smart. They see this is where the money's being
Sure.
channeled.
And there's a
This
lot
is-
of it out
And
there,
they're
right.
getting work from it, and
Yeah.
we need to figure out what might benefit us, yeah. Sorry, I didn't get you earlier.
No, yeah,
I was
and I
thinking that.
was wondering what you're talking about. So do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded?
Yep,
Yes. Okay, adjourned.
I think it's unanimous.
Thank you, it's